Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Debate Hub. I am Chesh, your master debater, as it rolls right on in. I'm here with Chris Shelton today for our, bi-weekly was what it's going to be show. It's diving into all the nitty-gritty nonsense that is Scientology. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey, I'm great today. Happy to be here to continue our, chronology. Our timeline of Scientology, that as an organization, as a cult. L. Ron Hubbard, its founder, and we've started talking about the electropsychometer, the E-meter, which is
Yep,
kind of
yep.
unique to Scientology in a lot of ways. As far as how they use it as a religious artifact. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we were talking about was the introduction of that. The 1951, 50 rolling into 52 is when Dianetics starts becoming this other thing that is
Yes.
now called Scientology.
Yeah, that was we were just talking about the coining of Scientology itself, about whether or not that was
Yes.
Hubbard, whether or not it was actually him, and when. I don't know if I'm gonna get over the blackout drunk beach writings, but from a
Yeah,
few years before.
Hubbard was something else, man. Yeah, so this time period has him. Okay, so he gets the bailout in 1951, right? He's
Yep.
bankrupt. I mean, he blew it. It was dead in the water, and he gets a bit of a bailout. Goes to to Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, blows that, right? Gets into a tiff with the guy. So now we come over to Phoenix, Arizona, where he goes off and starts up this thing that he had called Scientology because he no longer had the copyrights to Dianetics. He
I
couldn't use
wish
it.
I could fail upwards so well.
Right? Right? It
Who's
really
giving
is a
this guy
series.
money?
It really Scientology that's a, yeah, I think did we say that last time? That was such a great expression, this continuing
Yeah.
series of failings upward. But that's what Hubbard did. It's really just as we go through it again and again, you'll see that. This was still back in the fly by night operational days when Hubbard would go from one place to the next to the next. This was the pattern of the 1950s
And it
was
was
going
taking people's
here.
he would, like, show up, set that they'd be set up to go, they'd get their money together to do a thing, then he'd show up, take all their money, and leave.
Yeah, and he built up, and yet somehow through this belief system and the ever-changing methods that he was offering up through the 1950s, it wasn't
Yes.
just Dianetics and do this. It was an ever evolving series of methods or processes that you could run on somebody or do with somebody. And that was one of the things that kept it going. Was Hubbard was researching, and I use that term so loosely, uh, you know, um, and coming up with and lecturing. He was lecturing constantly. But let's take it step by step. So after the Wichita fiasco, and he shows up out in Arizona, he's got a small number of followers. He's lecturing. The lectures are literally recorded in his backyard at night, and he's commenting on the desert night and stuff. This is early 1952. Series of lectures is now called, it's now marketed as the route to infinity lectures, right? But at the time, it was just, I don't know, SOP, step one or something like that. Um,
Marketing.
yeah, market exactly, right? All these lectures from back then that Hubbard was literally delivering, if he hadn't thought to get a tape recorder to record it so that copies could be made to be sent out to other states where there were a few followers here and there. There was these little groups, and Hubbard thought to record his lectures.
Yeah.
If he hadn't done that, I mean, all of this would have been lost to time. And we have thousands of recorded lectures from
Would
Hubbard
have been
going
a
all the way back.
bizarre fever dream.
Yeah, well, his lectures go back to the 1950s. Actually, right, like I think June 1950. Dianetics is published May 9th, 1950.
Mm. Mm.
So by June, we have the first recorded lectures of Hubbard auditing somebody else
The fact that
and
we have
demonstrating.
all this information during a time. This is pre-social media. This
Oh
is
yeah.
this is the 50s. This is like now it's easy to go, oh, I want to see what stupid thing Jordan Peterson said, or oh, I want to see what Ben Shapiro said about this thing, or I want to see what whoever said about whatever. It's like chronologically archived as opposed to like the 50s. This is stuff that should be lost media for all intents and purposes, and for
Well, it's
some
and
godforsaken
yeah.
reason.
Well,
Which is
and in
great.
fact, this is actually so good for us because
Yeah.
from a longer term perspective, if you step out of the Scientology thing for a second, we're seeing all the way to now,
Mhm.
we're watching a cult group with some legs proceed to advance forward into time on the internet and we were watching the myth making happen in real time
Yeah.
of how the facts of L. Ron Hubbard that we have documented are converted by a group of people who really couldn't care less about those facts
Right.
into a mythology.
Yeah.
And
It's so
mythology
fascinating.
is kind of important in our world, right?
Wow, that's what a
I'm
plug.
gonna
What a
do that
convenient.
connection now, right? Yeah, but
Wow.
yeah, everyone
Wow,
knows that.
nice segue.
We were talking about Homer before this show, but I'm really all wrapped up in myth right now because I'm not just reading this book, but just in the lore of the Bible and the Bible history, and you can't avoid myth making when you look at the history of the Bible. So I'm watching myth making happen as a
Yeah.
Scientology follower over the last 10, 12 years. Now that I'm stepped out of that whole thing, I get to look in on this world of people, and there are tens of thousands of them.
Yeah, it's not a
There
small
still
group.
are. There's not millions, right? But there's a lot, and that's a group of people who are very much cloistered in this agreement that this myth is reality, and that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
talking about,
And like we can kind of take it and apply it backwards about how easy it is for these things to happen, right? And sort of look at
Exactly.
be like, well, we can understand how society is doing this now, even though all this information is easily accessible. So how much more difficult would it have been when this information was not as easily, or how quickly information moves nowadays? Like once upon a time, it would have taken
Right.
weeks, months, years in some cases to get a letter about like even a passing family member.
Exactly. And in fact, that's funny you mentioned that because just an hour ago, I was talking to my wife about the fact that she and I and other people, you stay tuned into certain things or certain, ways of looking at the world, and you see change coming before everybody else sees it. Maybe you know something about something, and so you can see where it's going before everybody else catches on. And I've noticed that in the last 20 years, it's now it's like sort of a 2 or 3 year lag before something is known or understood or there's a framing around it, and then it gets out to everybody. It can be a frustrating 2 or 3 years while you're waiting for everybody else to kind of catch up, and you
That's
try
how I feel
talking
like I
about
live
it
my
and
life. I'm not gonna
right,
lie.
right.
I feel like Cassandra half the time. All right.
Yes, exactly. And well, and I think I feel the same way. In fact, I used to
Mm,
use that exact same analogy, even though I'm a guy, right? And I was so frustrated until I kind of realized it's that filtration process, it's that
yeah.
acclimation process, and it just takes time to filter out there to people. It's not just the speed of communication, but it's the speed of
Processing.
integration into their thinking,
Yes.
where like okay for and I'll give just a really innocuous, completely non-controversial and completely opinion free example might
Uh
be I know her face.
huh.
An example might be 2 or 3 years ago, my wife and I were lamenting the fact that there didn't seem to be anybody in the Democratic Party who was representing us. We didn't feel
Mm,
represented by a
yeah.
single politician, and anything they were saying on the left was just, coming from Mars. So we were just like, wow, you really are just kind of speaking for corporate interests. And it was really, really annoying to the point that I was like, we need a third party. We're not, I even said that, we're gonna need a third party because these people aren't gonna figure it out. Well, 2 or 3 years later, Mamdani appears, Al Said appears. I'm voting for people here in my own district who are saying the things that represent me.
There you
That's
go.
how long it took for that agreement to go broadly enough for somebody to step up and go, I'll represent that.
Yeah.
And here we are. Now we're seeing this new breed of Democrat appearing called the Democratic Socialist. Well, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, we were like, where are these
Where are
people?
you?
Here they
Things like
are,
that
right?
have to be, and it's one of those things. It's frustrating, but it is a little bit. It has to be that way because that's just
That's
the way
right.
society works. It's like when people complain about
Just
the
the
law.
speed.
The law
Right.
is reactive, not proactive most of the time because it cannot be reactive. The law's not supposed to be. If the law was
Exactly.
proactive, it would be preventing us from doing stuff we need to experience and learn about beforehand.
You got it. You got it. This is the, the constant clash of, the liberal conservative, thing. So here we
Fitz
are,
is
but
saying they're unsubscribing because I said I was a Dr.
yeah,
Pepper
exactly.
hater.
Get out of here. So anyway, like I said, completely uncontroversial, no opinions there at all for anybody to disagree with, but
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
but there's, that's what I mean, right? It takes time. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so getting back to the Scientology world, I just think the myth making of it is just, it's interesting to watch right now, and we'll get to what all those myths are because there's so many of them in this group. It goes way past the whole Xenu volcano thing. You guys,
I'm not gonna be ready.
there's so much we're gonna talk about. So okay, so in fact, these early days are where a lot of crazy comes out. So 1951, Hubbard's got this e-meter, he's got his kid, his son, Nibs, has joined them in Phoenix at some point. I think it was summerish time period, if I remember right. And he's got this new girlfriend who becomes his wife, Mary Sue. Mary Sue Whip was her name. She becomes Mary Sue Hubbard, shortly thereafter. And she's, I think I mentioned, she's a real kind of organizational, snap to it kind of organized thinker person. She's a good counterpoint to L. Ron Hubbard that way because he is nothing about any of that. He doesn't know how to really organize his way out of a wet paper bag. So he needed somebody like this. It's this confluence of forces in a way, or personalities, that really makes a cult happen.
Yeah.
It's really not just we pin so much on the cult leader, and for once you get into some of the details of how this stuff works, you realize the cult leaders are usually so nuts that they need, especially the founding ones, right? The guys who start the thing usually have something so wrong with them that, not always, Jim Jones might be an example of somebody who's not this, but they usually couldn't organize themselves very well, and they need a circle of enablers, an entourage.
Yes.
And actually the celebrity analogy works too. If you're going to bolster a celebrity and make them a superstar, you're going to need enablers, right? That nobody does it by themselves.
Speaking of, this is Debate Hub, and if you want us to grow, enable me. Thank you.
Like
and subscribe.
Exactly. That's right. Join my cult, damn it.
Yeah, I'm great.
No, I am part of it.
Endorsed by an author, twice published author.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. Okay, so they're going to town. And now the product of this is a number of books and lectures that Hubbard gives through 1951 and 52. And I can encapsulate a lot of this time period with, initial stages of growth of a series of ideas that are going to grow into modern Scientology. This doesn't all start, just add water, and it's always been the way it looks now. It doesn't really finalize into its, final form, so to speak,
like we just
until
talked
the
about.
what's that?
The idea, like we just talked about, the idea has to go through the people.
That's right. And Hubbard's changing it over time. So it doesn't start with all the infrastructure that it has now, for example. It doesn't start with keeping, dossiers on every single person, you're doing your counseling on in written form with folders that are stored in warehouses, and we've always got the goods on you. That none of that was happening in the 1950s. That doesn't get really worked out till the 60s and 70s. So it's an ongoing sort of evolution into what it is now. but all the ideas that make it what it is now start at this time period, 1951, 52.
Yes. We had a
Dianetics has
busy
the
year.
Oh, very, very busy. And Dianetics comes up with the original idea that you can relieve stress and trauma and erase this reactive mind by going back and reliving your trauma. In 1951-52, Hubbard starts coming up with wildly different approaches to these issues. It's not just about your scraped knee that, somebody said something bad and now you have a subliminal command, directing your behavior. That's kind of the hypnotic approach of Dianetics and what it's saying it's going to do for you. Now we're addressing the spiritual side of you, this
Yeah,
Thetan.
the past
And the,
lives and the
and
Thetans, which is
and
what
it
we went
goes,
through last time. Yeah.
that's right, quickly into past lives.
Yes.
So the whole track of the past is now, how many lives have you had?
It's now your
What are
oyster.
you anyway? What is Hubbard? Hubbard starts formulating this bigger concept of what a Thetan is, and he's writing books
Yep.
talking about this, saying what are the potentials of a Thetan? What is this thing? And really, it comes out that it's kind of godlike. And he never uses that analogy, though. He never compares it to God. Instead, he puts down God in his lectures by saying that the Christian church and the Catholic operation are all control operations. And eventually, he goes to galactic levels of conspiracy about that, on the order of, like Dune, with the Bene Gesserit and that kind of thing, that mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Hubbard actually kind of came up with it first before Frank Herbert did. I don't know where Hubbard got it from. I'm not saying it's his idea, but eventually we get there. For now, at this time period of 51, 52, he's just having fun giving people drugs and putting them on an e-meter and asking them, questions and coming up with stuff that goes into past lives, ending up in a book published in early 1952 called Scientology, A History of Man. And there's a Wikipedia page about this
Yes.
book.
We shared it
So let's
last
go
time.
ahead
I
and,
will pass it over.
yeah, this is, this is all first year stuff. So,
Yeah,
this
we
is,
gotta look at this. We gotta
yeah,
you
so
want me
we
to
got
pull it up
it.
on screen?
There we go. Scientology History of Man. Yes. So you see this book with this caveman on it, chewing into a big slice of flesh. And here we go, right? So this book originally originated in Scientology auditing sessions held in Wichita, Kansas in early 1952. Actually, it would have been over into Phoenix by then, involving Hubbard and his personal auditor, Perry Chapdelaine. And Chapdelaine said Hubbard would settle himself on a couch with a tape recorder handy and an auditor who would be expected to provide appropriate feedback. In no time, a flow of introspection, like the free association characteristic of a psychoanalytic session, would begin. And Nibs here, like I said, his son shows up, and have both stated that when Hubbard fed his son amphetamines, Hubbard gave his son Nibs some amphetamines. Nibs started talking. He started really talking fast from the speed. And he kept talking, and his dad kept giving him speed. And all of a sudden, he was talking about his history when he was a clam and all these different situations in early Earth. And out of that came History of Man. So, so they're going back to talking about times when they were not human, when a Thetan or a theta energy that is you was occupying sub-evolutionary creatures, let's say, right? Earlier down the
Right.
evolutionary track. And
Yeah.
Hubbard was literally having people recall being a clam on a beach. And in this book, History of Man, he then says, now, obviously, you were not your personality you have now, then, with the knowledge set you have now, then, but you were an immortal spiritual being living a life in this material world as a clam.
And I'm a
And
material
because
girl.
that's and and because that's part of your history, there was a time period where, as a clam, you're laying on a beach and the salt water is coming, and invading your clam mouth and
Um,
causing you to create now I am not quoting science here, I'm quoting Hubbard. So Hubbard says this water and the sand and everything, and you'd eventually create this pearl because of this friction, this conflict. And he says, out of this conflict of the shell trying to close and the clam suffocating and all this, out of this
huh?
comes your modern toothaches. When you have a chronic toothache,
What?
it's because this clam thing has been re-stimulated.
I didn't know where you were gonna go with that, but it
That's where
wasn't
I'm going.
that. What
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah, I knew you weren't gonna see that coming. Yeah. That's
No.
that's the connections Hubbard makes with this, is these earlier incidents. Okay, because here's why.
I just want to be a clam on the beach, dude.
Right? Like, what's the problem? It should be like a Club Med
Hunter.
Vacation kind of recall, right? But that's not how auditing works. Auditing is looking for trauma. Auditing is looking for times of pain and unconsciousness, of serious physical damage. That's what auditing is looking for, if for the most part, especially at this time. So, what Hubbard is positing, right? His theory is that
Yeah,
that
theory.
things that have happened to you are stored in a box called your mind, in these mental image pictures, which are these, I think we talked about these three-dimensional
We did, yeah.
images of life, right? Well, those go back preceding your human existence. So you have pictures of other bodies you've been in
Yeah.
and other pains and deaths you've suffered, and those all accumulate to potentially be re-stimulated in the present time. If you
Right.
are someone who, goes to the beach and you're at the beach a lot, the Hubbard's idea is that the smell of the salt water and the
Clam
feelings and
brain.
all that is going to
Mm,
re-stimulate, or maybe a better word is trigger. In the secular world, we use the word
yeah.
trigger. In Scientology, they use the word re-stimulate. It's the same concept, and you are re-stimulating these earlier times of trauma, including in your past lives, because you never know what's going to come up, because everything in the mind is just kind of timelessly jumbled in this big box, and that's why you have
When
a
I
toothache
go to
now.
the beach, it is not to be traumatized. Thank you very much. I'm not here to sand. It's rough, it's coarse, it gets everywhere. Okay, so we do have a question, and I am
Yeah,
curious about this too. How old was his son when this happened?
yeah, about 19, 20, something like that. He was a kid. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
if
great.
that, if
So
that.
an adult.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, no, that's not in America. 21 is like the drinking adulty age, right? In America?
Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard Jr. Is born in 1934, and this is 1951 we're talking about. So
Nibs is such an
51,
unfortunate name.
41, 31. Yeah, not even, he's
Nibs.
17, 18 years old.
Oofed.
Yeah.
Oofda.
So yeah, he's giving his kid just handfuls of the shit. Yeah, yeah. Nibs talked about all of this stuff many, many years later. He was, in fact, one of Hubbard's enablers right during this time. He was with Hubbard building Scientology for all of the 1950s. His son
Right.
doesn't escape and get kicked out until 1960.
So he doesn't get to
End of
kick it
19.
until well into adulthood then, because that
Yeah,
would
yeah,
be he'd be like nearly 30?
yeah. Jesse Plemons played him in the Master movie,
Okay,
where he
okay.
plays L. Ron Hubbard's kid, right, or the Master's kid, and even has the red hair. So
Oh,
yeah, so Nib shows up. He's kind of hungry for Dad's attention, because remember, Dad was not paying any attention to his family at
right.
all. Right after the war
Yeah.
starts, or whatever, he abandons
Yeah, he
them. So
abandoned everybody.
Nibs comes running to him. I want to be, or whatever. However that worked, he shows up and comes under his father's wing for the next 9-10 years, and yeah, so that's how. So history of
Yikes.
man, that clam thing is really representative of the insanity of what's in that book.
That's
um
crazy. Well,
yeah,
clam,
like
you were a clam
crazy.
in a past life, and that's why you have a toothache. Could you imagine just saying that to somebody? like without the preamble, without the context, and just walking up to
That's
somebody,
right.
you're a dentist, and you're like, oh, your toothache is from this, you were a clam before. Excuse me?
Oh, it gets better. Let me read this quote to you from the book about this clam thing. Hubbard says, in one of the most famous passages of the book, Hubbard advised that should you desire to confirm this whole clam thing, should you desire to confirm this, describe to some uninitiated person the death of a clam without saying what you are describing. Hubbard really wrote this. Can you imagine a clam sitting on the beach, opening and closing its shell very rapidly? And he says, make a motion with your thumb and forefinger of a rapid open and closing, right? The victim may grip his jaws with his hand and feel quite upset. He may even have to have a few teeth pulled. At the very least, he will argue as to whether or not the shell stays open at the end or closed, and he will, with no hint of the death aspect of it, talk about the poor clam, and he will feel quite sad emotionally. That's in that book.
So
History
Hubbard
and
doesn't
Death.
know anything about clams, first off.
Hubbard doesn't know dick all about clams. No, not at all. Hubbard doesn't know dick all about anything, right? He is
Oh
just
my
making this shit up as he
God.
goes. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
totally.
humans. One thing about humans, right? And I think most of us here, most of you watching, probably are aware of this, and I'm pretty sure you and I have mentioned it on either our channels separately, or we've talked about it before, possibly. People will get themselves attached to anything. You put googly eyes on something, humans are like, "Oh yeah, that's my son."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Instantaneously. So like,
Anything.
oh man,
Anything.
look, I made people feel bad for this imaginary clam. What's that? Here, this is a what it's like a comedian, right? He pulls out a pencil and he's like, this is a pencil. His name is Greg. Greg has a son and a wife, and they have a very loving family. And after the show, he's going home. This is his last show. He's going to retire after this. Greg is amazing. Give it up for Greg. He's been with me for years. He's a great friend of yours. And oh no, Greg!
Exactly.
Greg the pencil. You knew him for 30
Exactly.
seconds.
Exactly. So we play on that all the time, and Hubbard just had a field day with this. I'm not even sitting here saying that Hubbard believed this. It's
Right.
just what he wrote.
That's what.
Right?
That's
He
just
didn't
what the
have to
book
believe it.
says.
It's just what's in this book, right? And he gave lectures around this. So there are written or spoken lectures you can you can buy, where he breaks all this down in gruesome detail. And Hubbard is a horrible lecturer, by the way. I have listened to hundreds, probably over 1,000 lectures of L. Ron Hubbard's. I've listened to a lot of that guy talk over the
That's
years. There was a lot of coursework, a lot of stuff I had to study.
Yeah.
And of course, I read a lot of transcripts of a lot of lectures I never even listened to because it was faster for me to read. But he goes off on these anecdotes and stories, and he has complex ideas, and he is trying to explain them in just this like infuriatingly difficult to understand way. And it's always on you that you can't follow or understand him.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, okay.
So,
I have a question about his
guy.
lectures, because
Yeah.
like, he's clearly some of his stuff is insane to follow. Were his lectures as equally as cracked as this clam thing?
Yes.
How can you possibly follow a lecture like that? Like, I understand, like, I've seen, like, lectures from Feynman, and Feynman, on more than one occasion, would talk about, like, quantum physics, and he'd say, all right, listen, this is gonna be a little bit tough because this is not intuitive, so you're not gonna really know where we're going, so you have to follow step by step, and we're gonna do this part first, and then, like, you know what I mean, right? Like, that makes sense. This man's just all over the map.
Yeah, Hubbard is like that without giving you that explanation first.
Right. Well, because he doesn't know where he's going at this point. He's just making shit up on the fly.
Sometimes it seems that way. Other times it just seems like he's trying to communicate ideas that he himself is barely understanding or is struggling to understand himself.
Does that like help sell the idea that he's got this information that he's trying, like prophet-y-esque kind of smoke and mirrors?
Little bit. Yeah, you'd have to, you know what? I would invite you to listen to one or two of his lectures that are online if you can find them, because they're all
Yeah,
they're
listen,
out there.
if you put this on me, you do know what's gonna happen, right? I'm gonna start Kent with Bent, but it's going to be Hubbard with, I don't know, somebody with an H name.
Hubbard the Blubbered or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, go for it, because I think you
Oh
will find
god.
it fun. Hubbard is an interesting man for me to dissect now, because I'm no
Yes.
longer married to the idea that everything he's saying is true and I just need to wrap my head around it. Now I
Right.
can look at what he's doing and what he's saying and just go, man, this guy had no idea what he was talking about, but he wanted to sound like he knew what he was talking about, right? Or
Alright,
he'll go
chat.
launch off into stuff that he really doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's really trying to convince you that he does.
Yeah.
And remember that, or maybe you don't know, but there are claims later in the 50s Hubbard himself makes that he is a civil engineer, that he is a PhD,
Yes. Yes.
atomic physicist.
Yeah.
He actually wrote a book in 1957 where he puts those credentials on the title by his name. This guy had just unlimited ego and an
Yes.
unlimited ability to lie about himself. So that's who's explaining this clam shit, right? And he's going
Yeah.
full bore, doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on this concept that past lives are a thing, and that the things that have occurred to you in the past lives have a direct effect on your physical and mental well-being now. And the connection, Elron with Dawn, the connection. Now, listen, you guys got to listen. I'm explaining stuff here. Uh, the
Chat's
connection
losing it.
between then and now
Yes.
is your mind,
Yes.
because the pictures that you're creating of these incidents are the reason you're fucked up now.
Well, of course.
It's the pictures that are fucking you up, because the pictures are made of energy.
And they're pictures
They're
that
not
I
just
made to myself that are holding my own brain in from being able to actually be whatever I should or ought to be or what I'm supposed to be.
You got it. The
Ugh!
pictures, the pictures are energy. And that energy impacts your body. When a picture is triggered, when it's restimulated, it literally comes back into being right, like right here. And it's a sheet of energy. It says you're not gonna see it, but you can see it with your thetan eyes, right? You can experience
Oh,
this picture. It's called a memory. But that
yes.
memory, Hubbard said, is not a brain phenomena. He rejects the entire brain phenomenon. He says, no, 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 no. Your brain is not where your memories are stored. He was convinced of this. Your memories are stored in these sheets of energy. And the sheets of energy, when they are triggered, they reappear, and their reappearance impacts on your body and causes you similar perceptions or pains or sensations as what's in the picture.
I guess if you wanted to be like, technically, I guess you could say that your brain only works off of energy anyway. So a memory, I guess, theoretically is energy by that fucking logic, but this is
But that's
clearly
not
not what
how
he's
he's
talking
but that's
about.
not how he means it. Yeah,
No, not even
because
a
this
little
is the
bit.
kind of because this is the kind of energy, remember, that you're carrying from life to life to life. So there
Ooh,
has to be some mechanism of permanency to these memories that is not your body.
so and then so Athen has an interesting follow-up question. What happens if you get overstimulated, or does that not exist?
You go crazy. You can go
Oh,
whack, right? People in insane asylums, people on the streets are overstimulated.
oh, sure.
And in a way, Hubbard says we're all overstimulated. That's why we're here. We're trapped on planet Earth in such
Oh,
a
I see.
condition that we can't even realize we're spiritual entities. We've forgotten our true nature. We can't even perceive our true nature because we're so overstimulated. The whole Xenu
Interesting.
thing, the whole volcano thing
Yeah.
is only important because it's a massive incident or event that we all were collectively part of, and
Okay.
we're all still trapped here because of it. And it is
Oh.
kept in restimulation 24/7. None of us are ever free from the Xenu thing.
None of us will ever be free from Xenu. It's such a metal line.
Well, the
We'll
whole
never
point of
be free from
OT3 is
Xenu.
the whole point of OT3 is to free you from it.
Yeah,
And
we
the
need to
first
kill
thing is,
Xenu.
yeah, the first, well, Xenu's long
Like
since
Buddha.
gone, but you have to kill the memories of Xenu, the trauma of Xenu.
Right.
And the thing about Xenu is that's so wild is because it was such a fantastically traumatizing, Thetan Holocaust level event.
Yeah.
Some Thetans checked out entirely and just went comatose and
It's
stopped being
oh.
active as Thetans and glommed onto you instead. And those are body Thetans. That's what the whole body Thetan thing is. That comes
Oh.
much later.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
That's
So,
Yeah, that's not till
okay.
1967 that comes around. So
So how much of this, cuz some of this is there is like a little bit of valid psychology in here. It's buried in bullshit. But it's like
oh, this
there's
is
like a
there's so
little
much
bit.
bullshit. The little kernel of the okay. Pierre Genet in the early mid 1800s
Mhm.
is sort of the modern forefather of the concept that past events could have a negative impact on you now.
Right.
Freud takes this idea, creates psychoanalysis with it, which is not really as anywhere near as helpful as some people think it is. But
Sure.
it's another evolutionary step.
Yeah.
The concept being the past,
It's a
has this intense
process.
effect on you as
Yeah.
an individual, not collectively. We're not talking about group psychology. We're talking about as an
Yeah.
individual. And there could be therapeutic value in addressing that past. And perhaps, you could re-examine or resort or let go of some of that past trauma if you understood the nature of it or re-experienced it somehow. There were lots of different ways of approaching this, but the basic concept of your past fucks with you is not something that has always existed with people, right?
It's
Um,
all not always going to be a good thing to relive your trauma over and over and over again until you kill that nerve
no,
ending, if you even
it's not.
can.
No, there is such a thing as exposure therapy. There is such a
Yes.
thing as re-exposure. There is such a thing as regression therapy. But it is, statistically speaking, according to studies we have, a small number of people, a small percentage of people who will respond, cathartically to that, right? That they will have permanent change and gain as a result. In other words, it's not always a good idea to re-examine or draw your past back up and relive it. Um,
Yeah.
I do think there's a great deal of value in understanding and sometimes in resorting our past. I've had a great deal of
New
therapeutic value
person.
from that,
Yeah.
but I don't go back and relive, times in the Sea Org when people were slapping me around or something. I don't need
Yeah,
to
that's
do that,
no
to
bueno.
let go of that, right?
I do this
Um,
thing that I've started calling it steeping, where it's like, hey, if you feel a certain way and you don't know why you feel that way today, just enjoy it. Just if it's sad, if it's happy, if you're mad, just sit there and be mad for a little while. Like it's
yep,
okay. Just sit there, steep in
exactly.
your emotion for don't get stuck in it, don't live there forever, but treat it like a hot tub soak. Like I'm just gonna be mad for the next 2 hours. Everybody leave me alone, and I'm just gonna vibe in here for a bit. I call it steeping. If I'm feeling
I
grumpy, I'm just like, I'm grumpy. You. And then I just sit
I
there for a little
I
while.
I am totally down for that. I think that's a very healthy way to deal with emotions. I think that a lot of people these days are way, way, way too afraid of their own emotional life. And
Yes.
I think in some ways we've made them afraid of it, but I
Mm.
think there's been a societal sort of push in the direction of, well, let's really understand these feelings. And like with everything, people can take it too far and become so immersed in it that they're either coddling it or they're just not dealing with it in a healthy way, and we
At
don't
that point,
want
you're
that.
just hurting yourself over and over and over again. You're not actually
Exactly.
processing anything.
Exactly. And now going back to Hubbard's approach was very, very much built up around this idea of you have to go back and relive it. And by doing that, but the experience of it is going to be not just traumatizing again, it's going to be you're going to go back over this, or we're going to somehow address these decisions, because what Hubbard ended up coming to pretty quickly in the early days was it wasn't just the event that happened to you that was bad, it was the decisions and conclusions you came to as a result of that event that is
Mm.
really fucking with you now. And that is
Mm.
kind of tuned in a little bit to certain aspects of psychology, right?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
just the event, but what you take away from it. And that's why I mentioned sometimes examining the past, you can resort some shit. You can go, oh, I decided this when actually, or oh, I see, actually, I've been blaming myself for something my mom did. Oh, right. You
Yeah,
resort, there's nothing,
yeah,
and that's a sort of accidental thing that would happen all the way back to the 50s with this. But
yeah.
Hubbard, of course, is going into past lives and in the
When he's
past,
taking advantage of that to be like, "Look,
geographic,
I did this,
eras.
so I can sell
Yeah.
this." Yeah, that's
Yeah. So Hubbard's selling this whole thing pretty hard. Not a lot of people are buying, except for the fact that because he's come up with a process of hypnosis, there's a peak experience to be had in these auditing sessions that he's giving people. It's not just about finding trauma and talking about it. It's somehow coming to a point of peak experience. You're indoctrinated in such a way that when you let it go, or when you have your realization of epiphany about
moment of
it,
clarity post nut.
that's that clarity is, Hubbard says, the indication that the trauma has erased. It's not there anymore. The incident is still in your memory to remember, but it has no more power over you than, a memory of throwing away a Coke can yesterday. It's not a big deal anymore. The trauma, the charge, the energy sheet
Yeah, well,
connected with that event is
yeah,
literally gone. Hubbard
I can
says you have erased it.
I can understand the appeal of the idea, of the
Yeah.
concept, of things that maybe things weren't your fault, or maybe they were your fault, but you can sort of come to terms with it and let it go so it's not weighing you down anymore. 'Cause that's just
Yep.
life. That's just things that happen in your life to everybody. And so it's a very, like, pleasant idea that it's actually, you can externalize the whole thing.
Exactly. And this was utter externalization, because
Yeah.
Hubbard was saying that this mind you're carrying around with you, with all these
Isn't even you.
pictures that you're storing, is unnecessary. You, as an individual little Thetan, are all you need. You don't need the body, you don't need the mind, you don't need this other encumbrance. You are the only thing that
There's parts of
actually
this I
matters.
like, and I'm not sure if I like that I like it. I haven't
It's
made
a
that decision
very
yet.
empowering message to a lot of people who are weighed down by the complications of life, who feel
Yeah.
the world has passed them on, who feel like they're overwhelmed by the world. Hubbard says, yeah, yeah, just throw all that shit on the junk pile.
You
None of
do,
that's
this man
important.
is selling
You
people
know?
Hakuna Matata. Like, that's what he's
Yeah. In a lot of ways. In fact, he had an early expression for it at this time period of the spirit of play. The spirit of
yes.
play. Right? A Thetan, he says, when he starts describing it and talking about it, it's very kind of, inspiring. It's all about, this free little naive, happy little spirit who just wants to, get along with everybody else and everything's great. And then life happens and the Thetan just gets more and more and more encumbered over the millennia by all these bad experiences and loses, Hubbard says, loses this spirit of play. It's not a game anymore. Now it's all serious and solid and real and hard, and you can't get out of it. And Hubbard says that's the trap. That's what you're trapped in when you are really this infinite being, right? And it's very akin to
Mm.
speeches like Yoda gives Luke Skywalker in Empire, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
infinite beings are we, not this crude flesh, right? You hear
Yeah.
stuff like this and you go, oh, it's empowering possibilities, all this like, magical thinking that enters in. And when you accept that as, that myth making as actual reality, that's the power of Scientology, early days to now.
I guess then it makes sense then why, if you're in Scientology, why you might have a harder time getting out of it too, because now you
Fuck
have to
yeah.
take back on all these burdens of life and the world, and like that sounds exhausting.
Oh, it was years of reconciliation for me. Reworking the model of reality from this, Thetan thing to what I think now. Oh, just took forever, because it was, and it really felt you're losing stuff. You're losing,
Yeah.
a lot of very inspiring, empowering ideas when you lose the Scientology dogma. You're not just losing ridiculous ideas about clams. You're losing, real
Fucking
empowering
clams.
stuff. Because you go after a while in Scientology, you get so used to this clam shit that you're just kind of like, okay, there's a
Yeah.
time track, there's these incidents, there's literally a book called The Map of the Time Track. Like they have this stuff mapped out on on time scales, right, with little notations of when these various things happened.
There
And it's
needs
called
to
a
be a
track.
Scientology clam mascot.
Yeah. Well, why do you think that one of the first earliest internet sites lampooning and exposing Scientology is called Operation Clam Bake?
I didn't even put that together. It's perfect.
That's
Somebody's
why.
got a sense of humor.
Oh my God. Anonymous took this shit and fucking ran with it. They
Hell
couldn't they
yeah.
couldn't get this stuff fast enough, right? It was just this is, like I said, you get Xenu in the volcanoes when you watch South Park, but you dig a little bit harder and you start coming up with clams. And you
Dig
come
a
up
little bit
with
more in the sand and you find fucking
That's
clams
right. You
with
get clams.
toothaches.
That's right. I mean, let's take a look. I mean, here we've also got, again from the Wikipedia page, just to give you a couple more things that Hubbard was writing down from this time period, imagining that evolution was real and we're going to go down this track of incidents that are going to kind of line up with evolutionary theory. And so you get stuff like the Weeper incident, or the Boohoo incident, which deals with a mollusk that rolled in the surf for 500,000 years, pumping seawater from its shell as it breathed. Weepers had trillions of misadventures, whereof the principle was
Misadventures.
whereas the principle was the anxiety of inhalation before the next wave, the inability of a pre-clear to cry. Hubbard explained the inability of a pre-clear to cry is partly a hang-up in the weeper. He is about to be hit by a wave, has his eyes full of sand, or is frightened about opening his shell because he may be hit. So earlier, when I was talking about the clam, I was actually describing some of this.
Oh my god. This is
Right?
leaning so heavily on humans' ability to project human stuff onto things that are not human. It is
It's
leading so like a tree waves. Does it?
exactly, exactly. And Hubbard used all of that language to communicate that these earlier states and these earlier body types, which is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You can be a human, but you can be a clam, you can be a fucking rock as a thetan, you can be whatever you want. Just because something doesn't have to be living in order for you to occupy it as a thetan. You have infinite power. You want to go be a car for a day, go be a car, right? But Hubbard says we've had this track of these earlier bodies, and because those bodies experienced their own versions of pain and trauma, that carries forward to now and translates to inability to cry, toothaches, chronic conditions. Ultimately, Hubbard says this is the stuff behind cancer,
Mhm.
right? Leukemia, bad eyesight, all the
Well, and some
physical
things that we
conditions.
might not even might not have known about as well in the 50s. Petite Flower is asking, is this what they think is psychology? If I remember correctly from last time, they don't like psychology. This is their own thing.
That's right. This is their religious dogma. This is their scriptures. This is how they think about it. But they don't enter in the idea of faith. They believe these are scientific or, realistic, literal truths, is to how they tend to think about this. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of discussion in Scientology about this either, by the way. It's not like Scientologists sit around talking about the days they were a clam. Nobody is encouraged to have discussions about this,
Having an AA
right?
meeting. Hey, you remember that time you were
Yeah,
a clam
nah,
dam? I remember when I they're sitting
that's
in a
right.
dentist's
It's a
office.
when I was a Scientologist, and I was in for decades, and some other Scientologists would start talking to me about this stuff and relate it to their own personal existence, I was always checking out. I was like, I don't want to have this conversation with you,
Oh
because it's
no.
awkward and weird. And Hubbard said that you shouldn't be talking about your past lives with other people because it can bust up their reality or
I'll
their
mess up
idea of what's real.
their situation. Well,
Yeah.
don't talk to each other
Yeah.
about these things that make no sense, because then they might
Or
not
you
make
might
sense.
or you might restimulate them.
No, can't have that.
Don't trigger people. I mean, that's common. You would
Yeah.
not run around triggering people on purpose,
Mm.
right?
No,
Right?
me?
Right?
Me?
Yeah.
I would
Ex
never.
yeah. So some Scientologists were more sensitive to this than others, right?
Yes, yes.
But I
Naturally.
always thought it was like fucking weird when people started talking about this stuff because I didn't want to talk about it. It was something you address in your auditing. But this is
Mhm.
early days of what Hubbard is saying.
Yeah.
He goes, look, this is what we've uncovered in this auditing using the e-meter. We've been mapping this stuff out for months. What he didn't say was, and I've been feeding my kid handfuls of amphetamines to get him to remember this shit. He didn't say that, right? I didn't
He
learn.
left
I
that
didn't
part
learn
out
about. Yeah, I
conveniently.
kind of left out some key important pieces of information, right? Or that
Mhm,
he
mhm, mhm.
personally, Hubbard, who was an occultist and spiritualist and believed
Yes.
in the concept of remote of I forgot the name of the thing when automatic writing
Oh.
as a practice where a spirit enters your body and you're writing there, they take over your body and write your thing, right?
Well, that must
There's
be
a
his blackout
claim
work.
there's a claim that Hubbard later said Dianetics was written through automatic writing.
Mhm.
Hubbard had beliefs of an occult nature that elemental spirits existed, that they were real things. And
Mhm.
he really thought he had his own guardian spirit, a red-haired woman in a green dress, inspired by childhood visions of Saint Helena in the church in Helena, Montana, where he grew up.
A
I've
red-haired woman
connected.
wearing a green dress? Very unique.
Yeah, that
Clearly, it
was
was
Hubbard's
just
thing.
brave. He was, like,
Well, it's
looking at the
somewhat
future.
inspired by the Empress card from the tarot deck, from Aleister Crowley's tarot deck,
Yes.
which
Yep.
Hubbard kind of glommed onto as a teenager. So I say all of this because this concept of other beings or elemental spirits or, these kind of spiritual influences on a person was something Hubbard already believed personally.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm
But he
laughing at chat.
never, but he doesn't, but he doesn't get into it too much in Scientology, describing it the way I just described it to you. It
Yes.
took me a long time to figure out where Hubbard came up with these
Sort it
ideas,
out.
right?
Yeah, figure out where half of this shit's coming from. Petite Flower in the chat
Exactly.
said, if you do enough drugs, the books just write themselves.
Yes, that is
That's
History of
it.
Man. It is basically a drug hallucination trip, right? It's just a compendium of these drug trips. But Hubbard presented them as research,
Research.
and to a group of people back then, all the way to now, that was valid research because it used an e-meter with a dial that has a needle on it that moves, right?
And keep
So
in mind,
it's
contextually,
scientific.
this is the 50s. This is 1951 and 1952. This is
That's right.
relatively fresh out of World War II. This is where things were. This is before a lot of the drug and psychedelics of the 60s and 70s.
That's
This
right.
is like, so
That's right.
contextually, that's where we're at.
That's right. And so it's important to say all that because what you and I take for granted as knowledge, those folks didn't have, right? Nobody
Yeah.
knew what a fucking transistor was. They didn't know what these things were. They didn't understand what they were looking at. It's as I think it's Asimov who says, right, to a people who, don't really are not scientifically literate, science will look like magic to them and be described
Yeah,
that way. And
absolutely.
that's very much early days of Scientology with this e-meter. So
So, like,
and
just to
yeah,
be
and
clear, just to help people get some context, things that were invented before the, like, in the 50s. Credit cards, the polio vaccine, black box flight recorders were in 1953. Transistor radio was in
yep,
1954. This is
yep,
pre, like, regular radio.
that's right.
Microwaves,
Yep.
1955. Velcro was in 1955 as well.
Oh, that's funny.
Barbie came out in 1959.
Damn, there
In
weren't even any Barbies.
There
Wow.
weren't even any birds. 1958 was the first integrated circuit.
Yep. Yep,
Seat
that's
belts
right.
were invented in 1959, and hard disk
Wow.
drives were invented in 1956.
Yeah.
Sputnik was
It's
1957.
yep.
Lasers were 1958. Videotape recorder was 1956. Colored television was 1954. And a passenger jet was 1958. The copy machine and Xerox. Weather satellites. Lawnmowers with cushioned seats. And pacemakers.
Right. So all
Super
of
glue
this
was
is building
1951. Sorry, I have a list.
okay.
Go on.
So all of this is being built on a foundation of credibility, or sorry, of credulousness, of gullibility, of
Yes.
ignorance, right, and possibilities. And that's really the hope and possibilities that I think we'd probably really want to focus on, because that's what people were joining this for and trying to do. Right? They weren't a bunch of crazy lunatics trying to take over the world. They were just trying to have a better life. And Hubbard
Yeah.
offers a dogma that says you're an immortal spiritual being who's lived before. This is far from original thinking. Buddhism's been saying that for centuries, right?
Oh,
There's aspects of Hinduism in this. There's aspects of paganism in this. There's a lot of people over the years who have had the concept of an immortal existence. Hubbard just points the arrow backwards and says, no, you've been immortal this whole time,
and you still
and
are.
you still are, and you always will be, and you have a far more power than you think you do. I mean, people are like, yeah, tell me more. And listen, this is going to sound crazy, and he says it. He says this is going to sound nuts, but we've been doing some research, and this device is telling us shit that is pretty fucking amazing, right? Like, we've not
Yeah.
only lived before, I can tell you about certain incidents that have happened. And you do the math and you go, okay, well, humans haven't always been here, and if I've always been here, then maybe I was a dinosaur, maybe I was this, maybe I was that. Is it really beyond the realm of possibility that could be that way? I mean, you logic it out and you go, well, there is a world where this makes sense. I'll
You
go
can
with
track it,
this.
yeah.
Then you go into an auditing session and your imagination is just over fucking stimulated beyond belief. And the auditor's asking you all these leading questions and leading you down the track. And you've just read this amazing piece of work. And you're just like, oh man, let me tell you about this time I was a mollusk, Oh, wow, rah, 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 rah.
And you're
And you
surrounded by other
cry.
people that are reinforcing this.
Yeah, you're in a group where everybody's digging this, but you have an auditing session where you experience, through remembering this crap, Hubbard leads you through this path of tears and anger and frustration, finalizing in exuberance. Is, oh my God. And because this, right? You're connecting dots that never should be connected,
Epiphanies.
but you're doing it, and you're
Yeah.
having this wonderful epiphany, and you come out going, well, fuck, I don't know if that was all true or not, but I feel great.
Yeah.
Shut up and take my money, right? I mean, that's what Hubbard was selling.
And there's
And
no
he
way
was, yeah,
for information to be traveling in the way. Like, if somebody, like, had this session now, and they were to then blog about it, or put a tweet out, or whatever, people would be responding to that and be like, are you fucking crazy? Like, you have
yeah,
this, it's really a lot easier now to check yourself against other people than it would have been in the 50s.
exactly. And that was why it was a fly by night operation, because what would happen is Hubbard would set up in Phoenix and he'd be
Yeah.
there for a year or however long he was there. I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years. And then Phoenix suddenly gets too hot, right? The feds come sniffing around, or somebody else is, complaining because you promised I wouldn't have to wear these glasses anymore, and I'm still wearing these glasses. Hubbard literally, did a lecture where he said they had a barrel outside the front desk and they were collecting glasses because people, were giving them up because their eyes were healing from the auditing. Never happened, right? The whole thing was just more myth making. But Hubbard
Yeah.
would say shit like that in his lectures, and he would get enough of an audience out in Nebraska or LA or New Jersey. He'd fly out there and give a little lecture to some people, and they'd record it and send those tapes around. And they had mailing lists and membership lists, and they were growing these lists. It became the Hubbard Association of Scientologists International. The HASI was the first membership group, and Hubbard had newsletters and little typed newsletters that they were literally mailing with stamps to each other. And that was how the early groups were organized. And even when they went bad, Hubbard would have labels for it. He had mechanisms in place early on, so when people turned on him, he could vilify them and, kind of
Yeah, all the
ostracize
blackmail.
them.
All
That's
the
right.
blackmail.
And he did it with a certificate system. He goes, "Okay, I'm the inventor of Dianetics. I'm the discoverer of Scientology. I am certifying that, I have trained you as an auditor to deliver this counseling that we have here called auditing. I'm certifying you to do this. I'm the certifying authority. You're paying me for this,
Yeah.
and I have the ability to cancel your certificate arbitrarily. I can decide to do that if you are an
I
unethical
retain the right
practitioner."
to da 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 da. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it
yeah,
was through
yeah.
that mecanism that Hubbard controlled Scientologists through the
Hey, that
50s.
sounds like the agreement to Facebook. Weird.
A little bit, exactly. So he would kind of get people on this system in the early days, as he was first establishing the initial churches of Scientology, and that begins in 53, 54. So
Oh my
so it's
god,
all
that's an
building on this
amazing
base
question.
of crazy. But Hubbard was just desperately trying to make something go of it, and this is what he was calling Scientology.
It
History of
worked.
Man Rules. And it did work. And Mary Sue was very industriously working, to set up this organization, do these newsletters, do these groups, can stay in touch with all these people, organize this stuff. And constantly, Hubbard's job became new product, new book, new
Yeah.
lecture set, new book,
Mm-hmm.
new lecture set. And the 1950s, this is why early days have so many books. There were about 5 or 6 published within that first year, 51, 52. We have some of the most famous lecture series from in Scientology's history being given during that time, culminating in the end of 1952 with what's called the Philadelphia Doctorate Course. And get this, Hubbard was actually literally issuing certificates that he was calling Doctor of Scientology. And so you could have a doctor title, right? A
Ooh.
PhD in Scientology by coming and listening to Hubbard lecture for a few weeks and practicing the auditing techniques he was saying we were doing now. And this was issued in December 52 in Philadelphia. Um, it was interesting because while he was he was lecturing 2 or 3, 4 lectures a day in full time, right? Doing this class. And in the middle of it, this was December 52. I think it was December 15th or something. I think it was federal marshals show up to issue like a subpoena or something on him. Like some fucking
Boom,
crazy
boom,
shit
boom,
was going
FBI, open
down.
up.
Yeah, while he's doing this stuff, right? He's hiding in the back from them. I mean, it was just this whole
Oh
thing.
my
None of this
god.
survives on the lectures. We didn't know about any of that part, right?
Oh,
I didn't I
dang,
didn't yeah,
man.
I didn't find out about that till after I got out of Scientology.
They left
But
out the good shit.
that's right. And Hubbard was going to places and people were organizing these events for him and he was just fucking them over, right? This woman, Helen O'Brien, wrote all about how Hubbard had fucked her and her husband over because her
Right.
husband was desperately trying to get help with a medical condition he had, and Hubbard kept shining him on until the guy died. And Helen O'Brien finally was, disillusioned enough with the whole thing, and she wrote a book about it. So there's the early on, Hubbard was fucking people over and having and getting bad press as a result. It wasn't like he just had this avid following and nobody saw through his bullshit. But
Right.
that's why he was doing so much reputation management and how he developed right from the beginning what became the Office of Special Affairs, the whole dirty trick stuff we talk about with the fair
Mm,
gaming and the stalking and harassment.
yeah.
The early days of that is also in this time period.
Well,
So,
especially if he's setting
yeah,
himself up to be able to have blackmail on literally everybody who joins up ever, forever. So,
that's
I
right.
mean, it
That's
seems like
right.
he's primed it almost right out the gate.
He's got that developing at this time. There's not yet the idea that you're going to do an auditing with somebody and you're going to write down every single thing they're saying and you're going
Mhm.
to put it in a folder and we're going to store it in a warehouse. That level of institutionalization hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So we're not yet at the point where Hubbard himself could absolutely and absolutely did use people's secrets against them, but it wasn't yet institutionalized that there was this subunit that was set up to go through that information. If somebody went off the deep end, or went off
Went off
the
the
party
rails.
line.
Yeah.
That level of institutional blackmail becomes possible around 1960. So for the first 10 years, he's floundering about using, sometimes he would write to the FBI and accuse people of being a communist and try to get the FBI to do his dirty work for him.
Yes,
That
because
was
it
an
was the
early
50s
play
and they
that
were
he
a
used.
communist.
Yeah, this is 1950s. What
Oh,
else
it's
is
the
existing in
50s! Rocket
1950s?
Man!
McCarthyism, or the Red Scare, right? The whole beginning
Yeah.
of the Cold War. So
Yeah.
Hubbard tried. We know from the FBI files that they were laughing at him too,
Oh,
but
good.
he tried. He tried, and he was trying to figure out these mechanisms. That's why I say the cult leaders organically figure this stuff out. They don't have to go read about other cult leaders, or read
Right.
about authoritarians, or go read about what Stalin did. They don't
Trial
do
and
that.
error.
They
No.
figure it out themselves as they go.
Yeah.
And the ones who succeed are the ones
Yeah.
whose names we know, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that was Hubbard's deal through the 50s, and so he has Mary Sue, he has his son, and he has other names we know of who were enabling him at this time, right? They would kind of do anything
It's
he
like
told them to
inner
do, because
circle. Yeah.
yeah, real inner circle stuff. People who were ghostwriting for him, by the way. He wasn't even writing all the books or writing all the
Right.
stuff. He was often dictating, and they would take it and write from those dictations or notes, or he'd give lectures and he'd say, go put that together into a book. And then he'd slap his name on it, right? Because it was his work, his property, his money. It was always about,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was always about
Holla
collecting that
holla.
cash. And Hubbard would go around to the different groups that he was doing lectures at
Mm.
and give me all the money, right? He'd take as
Yeah,
much as
yeah.
they would give him.
The
And
tithe.
that's how he kept it going all through that first decade. So in Phoenix, we get the whole Thetan thing really kind of blowing up and becoming this very, very developed
Very
sort
marketable.
of, yeah, it's sort of mythology, this sort of like concept of what this is. But it's not just myth making, it's all about the auditing. It's the myth is Hubbard saying all this stuff, all this fantastical, crazy, wild stuff is there, but
Mm.
that's not really the important part. And it was an interesting juxtaposition he created with that, because some people you would think would embrace the weird and go, this is what we're all about. And he kind of treated it a little differently. He's a little more clever about it. He goes, yeah, it is a little weird, isn't it? It's kind of fucked up. Nobody would really believe this shit. But
He
that
leans
doesn't
into
make
it.
it not true, right?
Right.
It could still be
Right.
true. And he said, the results, the proof is in the pudding. He said, you go into an auditing session, you have the experiences you have, you feel the way you feel. That's all the proof we
That's
need.
all valid. Yeah.
And he literally would say that out loud. He
Yeah.
talked exactly like that. So
Technically not wrong.
people found him relatable that way, because he
Mm.
wasn't speaking
Mhm.
from on high. He wasn't pretending to be or acting like a typical religious prophet.
Yeah, it wasn't
He
condescending in
was
that way.
he wasn't quite like that. That's right. He
At least not
could
in his,
be
he was
if
as
you
a
pissed
person, but not.
exactly. If you pissed him off, if you challenged him one-on-one, he'd rip your fucking face off. But as the
Mhm.
prophet, as the leader, he wasn't presenting himself as a prophet so much as a reluctant discoverer of truths that, I'm sorry, but this is kind of how it is. And
How it
so if you want to
is.
get better, this is the path, right? Like, I don't know what to say.
I'm
It
not the
was
one who
kind
gave
of
you a
more of
toothache.
exactly.
The
You don't have a
best.
toothache because I say so. You
Yeah.
have a toothache and we figured out why. And if you don't want to believe it, that's your problem.
Then enjoy your toothache, asshole. It's this classic if you're gonna lie and you're gonna lie well, it's gotta have some truth to it. It's gotta have something to it that is like that people can glam onto.
That's right. That's right. And the Thetan and Dianetic stuff was, if nothing else, kind of original.
Mhm.
kind of interesting and very, very fringe. You know, again, remember, we're talking
Yes.
hundreds,
Yeah.
a few thousand people at most being connected up with this. This was a very fringe and one of many cults in the 50s that were springing up around scientific concepts or ideas
Yes.
and trying to meld them, like we see all the way to today, with quantum healing and Deepak Chopra and, you know, these kind of conny guys who align
Yeah.
themselves with quantum physics. That's all Hubbard. Hubbard was doing that
The
shtick before quantum
same
physics was a
thing.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
same
that
stuff.
it yeah, it's same shtick, different group of con artists, right?
That's right. And
And
let
you get
me
some
tell
rich
you,
people into it that endorse it for you, and off you are to the races.
patrons, yes, that's a good point, because patrons were really, really super necessary. And that's why Hubbard created the membership system to try to get a subscription plan going, right, for his income,
Mm-hmm.
and also to try to find out and focus on, you know, the richer class, right, or the moneyed
Hey
class
guys,
that
if
he
you know
could
a
bring
rich
in.
person, send them my way. Like
Exactly.
and
Well,
subscribe and
literally,
become a member of the channel.
1955, Hubbard issues his first written list of celebrities that he wants on board, telling everybody, "Let's get these guys." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was hyper aware of you know, I want that big money. But going a little bit back, one other thing about this time period, as far as what Hubbard was talking about, is he wasn't talking quantum theory, but he was talking electronics, and he was connecting it all with basic electrical flows and currents, and what at the time I believe Hubbard thought of as very advanced electronics, but it wasn't. And I've had electrical engineers and literal quantum physicists that I know review this material, and they just can't stop laughing at it. It's hilarious to them. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely hilarious. But Hubbard wrote books at this time, or had books written. Scientology 880, Scientology 88008, which is the book that goes with that Philadelphia doctorate course, and a few other books at that time, where the titles are basically are a kind of numerology. Hubbard was kind of using numbers in a funny way,
Oh,
but
of course he was just like picking stuff he liked and just being like, I like this, let's throw
everywhere,
that in
from
there.
everywhere.
The
Yeah,
Thetans
that
belong on Quizilla. Like, I don't know if you guys did like the Quizilla stuff back when the internet was sort of newer and people were like, oh, let me write a story or let me write a thing. It's gonna tell you which Backstreet Boy are you, which Barbie are you, which
right,
blah
right,
blah blah
right.
blah. The Thetans like line up with that shit perfectly. Which Thetan are you? Which
Sure,
which emotion?
sure.
Where are you at?
Well, you know, yeah. Then there's the tone scale, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff piled in here. Because he's
So
got his
much.
emotional scale.
There's a lot of
Bringing,
clams.
he's got clams, and now he's
Clams.
bringing electronics into it. And I mentioned the sheets of energy thing.
Yes.
That's one part of this electronics picture that he's painting.
Oh,
He's
okay.
Because here's the
Mm-hmm.
deal.
Sci-fi.
Okay, here's the question he was answering with this. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure he had people asking him questions like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute. If I'm an immortal spiritual being who has no location in space or time, I am separate from this physical realm or this physical plane in every way, and I really simply exist in a timeless sense,
Yeah.
then how am I stuck in a body? How does that make any
Yeah. How did
sense?
this
Right?
happen? Yeah.
What is the connection? How do I connect these two dots? And
Yeah.
Hubbard said electronics is what connects these dots, because the thetan is the subject of electronic flows. You can hit a thetan, he says, with hardcore energy and
Yeah.
make and hurt it. Now, this is impossible according to Hubbard's theory of where thetans come from and what they are, but Hubbard couldn't help himself. He had to describe thetans in physical universe terms:
Yeah.
big, small,
Yeah.
expansive, tiny, in a location,
Mm-hmm.
being able to be and interact with electronic flows. These are all manifestations of a physical reality. And Hubbard's explanation for that is, well, a thetan is located where he considers he's located. A thetan is able to be hurt by things it considers can hurt it. So it's all, at the end of the day, a belief a Thetan has
Mind over
that you
matter.
can hurt him, and so you can hurt him, right?
Right.
Even and again, even terms like him or her don't really apply to a Thetan. They're not gendered,
Sure.
right? They're just spiritual beings. So, but Hubbard would refer to them as him, not it. Stuff like that. Little
Make sure it has an
things in the
identity.
language
Yeah.
that really put there that this is a thing, even though his whole
He's
philosophy is built on the idea that it's not
it's
a
not.
thing. This
Yeah.
is not a small
Interesting.
point in the big logic of this. It really unravels the entire belief system.
Mhm.
But I'm highlighting it. Scientologists don't. They never go near any of this stuff.
No, why would
But what
they?
I'm saying is ultimately it doesn't make any sense. But what he says is that a Thetan is able to be impacted by and influenced by electronic flows. And he says that some of the electricity that has been used against Thetans is so powerful it hasn't even been invented on Earth yet.
Right.
And I'll tell you the perfect analogy for this, and I might have used it before, but I've used it on my channel many times, is
Mhm.
Ghostbusters,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Proton packs. You
Yeah.
go, how am I supposed to affect a ghost? Well, let's invent a proton pack, and we're going to use quantum levels of energy to wrap up a spiritual entity and put him in a trap, right? Put him in a
Yeah.
physical location.
Yep.
That's exactly how Hubbard describes what was
Yep.
done to Thetans to imprison them.
Yeah. And then we talked about last time Thetans being against each other and trapping each other and tormenting each other based on bad experiences they've had to turn into bad Thetans or
That's right,
yeah.
exactly. And they would use electronics against each other.
Right.
So Hubbard was all about this. This was as far as his thinking could go. He never thought in quantum terms or anything because that wasn't a thing in Reader's Digest for him to read about yet. And that's pretty much where Hubbard got his science from, is Reader's Digest, or conversations with people he would have that he thought knew what they were talking about, and then he would take that and plug it into his way of his mythology and serve it back up the next day in a lecture. So I'm sure at some time in the early 50s, Hubbard had a talk or a discussion with somebody in the electronics field, maybe Volney Matheson, the guy who invented the e-meter, for all I know, and figured out, oh, this is how to talk about Thetans and how you could, trap them, control them, make them do your bidding, would be with electronics. And he writes chapters about how Thetans use varying degrees of electric flows at different wavelengths to perceive the physical world. Because how would a Thetan who has no eyes
Know what
perceive the
anything
world?
is. Yeah.
How does a brain, right? Through perception, interpretation of perception. So instead of using organic media to perceive the universe, Hubbard says that Thetan uses electronic media. He puts out a
This
flow
really
and it
doesn't help
bounces
that like
back.
your brain operates on like electricity basically and that you can trigger certain brain things. And this is all again, we're still in the 50s where there was already like mind control. Woo, Twilight Zone.
Well, yeah, to developing. Hubbard in
Yeah.
fact says one of the reasons why electric shock is so bad, and one of the reasons why psychiatrists use it, is because
Mm,
it restimulates all this electric shit that was done against you in the past
mm.
and fucks with your electronic flows now, because
Ah,
you're
those
still
the
manifesting all these
evil
electronic flows.
psychologists.
Yeah, those psychiatrists are out to murder you with electronics, just like they used to try to murder Thetans, right? Millions and millions of years ago. He says they're the same creatures coming up the line,
So
that the
when what does
psychiatrists
a
are those people from back then.
yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just come forward. He says they're psychotic lunatics, that there's a race of them and that they come from the planet Farsec.
Ah, of course.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
part of
located
Scientology too.
somewhere.
Yeah. So it all
Are
goes
they
to crazy
also
places.
Thetans, or are they
Uh-huh.
definitely not? Okay, so there's
Lunatic
good guy
Thetans.
Thetans, lunatic Thetans, and
There's
everybody else
Thetans.
Thetans.
The way Hubbard later explains it is there's Thetans who do a kind of reversal. They kind of introvert. They kind of,
Nega
you know,
Thetans.
yeah, they kind of like,
Oh,
do this thing where,
the
survive equals
inverse.
succumb, and death equals life and this kind of thing. They get it all twisted up, and
Bizarro.
they don't change their nature as a thetan, but they're so self-deluded that they are the most antisocial, anti-everything thetans you can imagine. And Hubbard
Therefore, they
says, yeah,
must be
we'll get to them
psychologists.
last, he says.
Psychiatrists. Oh.
We'll get to them last.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the psychiatrist, he says. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So this electronic stuff is also coming out of 51, 52 time period, especially 52 at this point. And this is the foundational belief system. This is why I'm harping on this, because these are the rocks that Scientology is built on. The belief system all comes down to thetans, and thetans who have been completely fucked up by millions and millions and millions of years of abuse, both to each other, to themselves. You know, it goes all different directions. In Scientology, the word is flows. You have 4 flows in Scientology through which bad things can happen. You could have a flow of somebody doing it to you. You could have the flow of you doing it to somebody else, and that can fuck you up. You can have the flow of observing other people do it to other people, and that's going to fuck you up. And you can have the flow of 0 of doing it to yourself. And all 4 flows, most Scientology addresses things on all 4 of those flows. So you get a well-rounded look at how you fucked yourself up over all the centuries.
Of course.
Yeah.
Godless Scummer for 2 says, is Fraser Crane the arch nemesis of Scientology?
That kind of person is a hated and despised person in Scientology. Yeah.
So, yes.
In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why Kirstie Alley never really showed up on Frasier.
Really?
Yeah. Really. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I'm not kidding. They have a huge chip on their shoulder about psychology and psychiatry. Huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So that's how it happens. So that's early days. That's how it starts. And coming into 1953, 54, we have more of the same, really. Hubbard's in Phoenix. He is lecturing to small groups of very, very dedicated people who want to learn how to do this auditing and address thetans. Hubbard is now coming up with processes that go way beyond regression therapy, because he's now trying to focus on exteriorization. And he has this theory that if you can pop a person out of their head and get them to realize they are a spiritual entity, they are not their body, if we use this approach, we can get the thetan to directly fix the body, fix itself. As a thetan, it will be able to have all this power that it doesn't have when it's trapped in a body, kind of thing.
Right.
Or, with lacking the self-awareness of its actual existence, it's not able to do things that once it becomes aware it can. This entire effort went on for about 2 or 3 years and was an abysmal failure. But Hubbard went in this direction, right? Of let's get the thetan out and let's address the thetan and get the thetan to fix things directly.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
It would make sense. That's right. Theoretically, we don't need the Dianetics stuff. We don't need to go through every single incident. If you are millions of years old, there are billions of incidents. How are we ever going to recall them all? Let's forget that. That's not the approach. And that's how he sort of moved on from Dianetics for a good long time.
Yeah, that makes sense. You would have wanted to distance himself from that.
That's anyway, right. And he addresses these processes, and the term in Scientology is exteriorization. So let's get you out of your head. And Hubbard comes up with about 7 or 8 or 20 different ways of trying to get people to have that experience. And the reality versus the myth,
disassociation,
of course, is dissociation. That's right. He's creating dissociative states, and he's trying to create them on a chronic, continuing, repeating basis. The ideal picture in science.
So he's doing like behavioral Pavlov-y stuff to get people out into this like third-party view of themselves. Oh my god!
Well,
what an asshole!
Well, yeah. but it's, I don't know that he knew what he was doing as far as, creating dissociative states, but that
Yeah.
is what he was doing. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
other
yeah,
word
yeah.
for it,
He knew he was doing
except,
something, and he knew he was doing it to get money and to control people
uh-huh.
because that made him feel good. He didn't necessarily know what it would be called in the future.
He did not. He had no concept.
Sure.
But what he did, but the reason it serviced him and was of great value to him is because it would prove his Thetan theory
Yeah.
at a subjective level, and there is no proof like subjective experience, right? If I
Right.
if I believe I have popped out of my head and my interpretation of that event is not dissociation, it is I am an immortal, I've popped out of my head because I'm a spirit. Oh my God, right? You own me. And
Yeah, well,
that's
it's like
how
alien
Hubbard,
abduction stories, right? You're not gonna convince somebody who has experienced being
right?
abducted by aliens that they weren't abducted by aliens.
Exactly. Even if it was sleep paralysis and we can explain all of it, right? It doesn't,
Yeah.
but I live something different than that. No, you're interpreting what you lived through differently than I am is what the real fact is. And
Right.
that's why I say that interpretation of the event is so, so, so important. In
Yeah, absolutely.
Scientology, the interpretation is you popped out of your head. Yay! And everybody's so happy. And this is, by the way, something Mary Sue Hubbard was never able to do, by the way, in all the years that she was in Scientology. It finally blew up in the 1970s. She was so pissed. But yeah, she
How?
was never able
Why
to
did?
exteriorize. She was
I
never able to do it. And I never did it. I never popped out of my head in all the years I was in Scientology in such a way that I saw myself. Not once did that
Okay.
happen to me. And of course, I'm happy that it didn't. I would feel bigger.
Sure.
I would
Yeah.
feel the hairs on my arms. I would feel bigger, but I wouldn't see anything outside of my body or anything like that. But there's a lot of other terms in history for this kind of stuff: clairaudience, clairvoyance, remote
Oh
viewing, and
yeah.
all this kind of stuff. So Hubbard he was building on this idea, and he was very, 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 very glued to it for a few years. And there were a number of lecture series and auditor training courses he was giving to try to get people to do this and do it regularly, and be practitioners of this who could go deliver Scientology auditing to tons of people and pop them out of their heads. And they had commands like be 3 feet back of your head. Just I'm sitting here in front of you or in a room, right? Be 3
Yeah.
feet back of your head. And the
Mhm.
guy would go, "Yeah, I don't know that I can do that. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not hearing anything." Okay, totally get it. Totally get it. Try not to be 3 feet back of your head, right? That might be the next one, a little reverse psychology, right? Or
Right.
if that doesn't work, do this other thing. And then that doesn't work, do this other thing. And if that doesn't work, okay, Hubbard came up with, we need to do a more basic process with you. You're not up to the level of being able to pop an out yet.
You are a loser.
You, sir, are a loser. That's right. In fact, he would call these people, eventually, he created a scale and,
Yeah.
okay, close your eyes. What do you see? Right. Well, I see blackness. Oh, okay. You're a black 5, right? You're down here at step 5 on this ladder I have created arbitrarily,
Nobody,
right? And
nobody with
so,
aphantasia got anywhere in Scientology.
not at
Holy
all. In fact,
moly.
so many people spent hundreds of hours trying to pop out of their head, have this experience, and just couldn't get there. So, what Hubbard would do is he created what were called, and this survives to this day, it's a very, very important part of Scientology. He created at the same time what is called objective processing. So, all the memory stuff and the regression stuff and the Thetan stuff is subjective auditing. It
Okay.
has to do with thinking and the mind and thoughts, right? Objective auditing is where I go in a completely different tack, and we're going to focus on the objects around you and the things in the physical world around you. It's
Oh,
objective auditing. And this
okay.
kind of auditing is not about recalling things. This kind of auditing is about moving your body around and getting you oriented in your body and with your body comfortably now in the here and now. Because if you're not that, you're never going to be able to let go of the body and pop out of it, is the theory here.
It's just such
So
an
now we're going to do
interesting,
this
like,
objective auditing.
like,
And what this might
training.
look like is you and me in a room.
Yeah.
Maybe we're sitting down, maybe we're standing.
Sure.
There are, at this point, probably over 1,000 different processes for objective auditing. One such one might be, and an early one was to take a book and a bottle. Literally, it was a wine bottle, and put one on one table on one end of the room, and the other bottle goes on the another table on the other side of the room. And it's a small room, you know, you got a little desk, right? It's an auditing space. Look at that book, walk over to it, pick it up. What is its temperature? What is its color? What is its weight? Okay, good, thank you. Put it down in exactly the same place. Good. Look at that bottle. Walk over to it. Pick it up. What is its temperature? What is its color? What is its weight? Put it down in exactly the same place. Look at that book. Walk over to it, right? Back and forth, back and
I
forth.
would throw hands. I would not be able to handle this at all.
A very common
Yo!
reaction. A very
Oh.
common reaction. And you were indoctrinated to push through that shit. You push through that shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, you're trying
That's
to
your
reach
bank.
basically enlightenment. That's not even that's a baby step if you're trying to reach out into the universe of self. That's nothing.
It's to
Oh,
orient you in the physical universe. It's to get you, this is the brilliant part.
repetitive.
It's a repetitive process which induces trance.
Yep.
But just like Dianetics does in its own way. So it's
Yeah.
still a trance-inducing hypnotic process, which makes people pliable to or susceptible to pre and post hypnotic suggestion, right? You're indoctrinating people. This is
Yep.
the process. This is how it's going to work. This doesn't
Yep.
come out of nowhere. When you're a Scientology person getting auditing, they educate
You
you on
paid
what
for
the steps
this.
are. You are
Yeah.
paying for it, but the beginning steps is not, okay, start the commands. It's
Right.
we're going to clear up what these commands mean, and I'm going to walk you through why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And the end result of this is going to be XYZ. So we're not done until we've hit XYZ. You know that before you begin. And
Yes.
every process has the same XYZ. It is very good indicators. You're very happy. You're very joyous. That's part of the end of it.
Yeah.
A cognition, which is an epiphany, a new realization about life that must occur before the process is considered finished. You have to have some epiphany. And on the e-meter, there's a particular phenomena they look for with the needle where it does this kind of drifting back and forth motion. It's called a floating needle. So
Okay.
FN, VGI's cognition release are the 4 things you need to achieve in order to end the process.
Yeah.
And we're going to be here doing this process
Until you do
even
it.
if we have to do it day after day until we get to those 4 points. Now, maybe we end the session after 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever, because you have a life and you got to go to your life. But when you come
You
back,
need to go
we're
make
going to pick
money
it back
to
up.
pay me to do this more.
That's right. And here we go again. And it is delivered by the hour.
No.
It's paid for by the hour. So you're going to do this objective processing. Now, get this. Hubbard says that this particular process I just told you about, which is, again, one of hundreds,
yeah.
that procedure is called opening procedure by duplication. That's the name of the process. It's an internal thing. It makes more sense, you know, if you know about procedures and shit, right? But that's the name of it. Op pro by dupe is what it's shortened down to in Scientology, right? Everything is shortened down. So nobody runs
you gotta
around
have that
saying
internal
opening.
jargon.
Oh, tons
Yeah.
of it. So nobody says, you know, opening procedure by duplication. They all run around saying op pro by dupe. And if you are on op pro by dupe, you can look forward to at least, Hubbard says, at least 25 hours of that process before you are going to be finished. with it,
Just kill
right? So
me.
you're gonna
Just
back and
kill me and let
forth,
me start
back
again.
and back. I wanted to take that bottle and kill myself or kill my auditor 20 times over when I did that fucking
Oh,
process.
no doubt.
However, one of the things that will also end the process before 25 hours is if you go exterior.
Oh.
So if this activity puts you in a state of
Releases.
dissociation, you're done.
Oh, Brett, man, I'm not gonna lie. I would probably disassociate so fast because I'd be so bored out of my fucking mind that I would stop remembering that I was doing the task. Like, I've worked
Or you would
jobs that
at
are that
least
mundane.
convince yourself that you had.
Or I just convinced the auditor. Fucking
Yeah,
Christ. I just
but
lied.
remember the entire purpose. You are as what is the term, right?
I'm earnest. I want to be
Sunk
doing
cost
this.
fallacy. Sunk cost.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
paying for this. You've already paid for it. You're not paying for it
Yeah.
after we're done. You already paid. The money's already in the bank. It's already spent, right? So you're invested in this being a successful
Better get
thing
my
for you.
money's worth.
You're not there to fight this. And you're already in a
Yeah.
group. By the
Yeah.
time you're doing a process like this, you haven't just walked in off the street.
Yeah, all your
You've
friends are
already
part of
had
this. Your life is this is now a big part of your life.
You're wrapped up in it. That's right. And now you're committed and now we're going to do this process. So in a way, it's very, very
Makes
similar to
sense.
other weird ritualistic stuff that people can get into.
Yeah.
You get into TM and after a while they'll be encouraging you to, levitate in your meditations and be doing it for 8 hours a day. And nobody who goes into TM at the beginning thinks that's where it goes, but that is where it goes.
I mean,
So
I didn't come here
if you
expecting
want
us to
to
cover clams either.
Exactly. So if you want to commit yourself, and it's a gradual series of agreements and people get there. And
Yeah.
tons and tons of people, don't even get me wrong, tons of people bounce off of this stuff too. There are
Oh,
people who
yeah.
hit this and just go, no fucking way.
No,
But
yeah.
it's a little surprising. It's a little bit of an education to see how many people will stick with this for 25 plus hours. And this is just one of many such objective processes. There's a standard battery of them that every single Scientologist has to do. It's not negotiable. As you move up the ladder to clear and OT, the big states of Scientology, you
Right.
have to pass through the gateway of objective processes. It's now in modern Scientology a full step that you have to do. Everybody has to do it. Originally, it was being designed as a series of processes to undercut exteriorization for those who couldn't do it. Hubbard eventually concluded and told Scientologists in lectures, yeah, that kind of, we were naive in the early days. We thought people were way better off than they actually are. You try to
Right.
exteriorize most people, it's going to be a total fucking failure. But he tried hard for about 2 or 3 years to do that before it really just didn't work
So
out
this
and
was
he
like
had to
into
move on.
1956 then, roughly.
Yeah, we're talking what happens is by 1954, Hubbard has pretty much finalized most of the writings and lectures having anything to do with what thetans are and how they work.
And
Most of that material is covered then.
and when
So,
was it that the FBI busted in at one point during his
oh, that comes much
lectures?
later. Yeah, that
Later.
comes
Okay,
in.
okay, okay, okay.
There's a raid in '63,
The
but
60s. Okay, we're in
that's
54.
later. Yeah. So so philosophically, or in terms of the material of Scientology, that's pretty much the early years up through '54. I By 1955, Hubbard had finally worn down Don Purcell enough to get back the rights to Dianetics,
Ah, there you go.
right? Purcell bails him out. Hubbard fucks him over, says fuck off, runs off to Phoenix, takes the mailing list, take as much as he can, tries to, rip Purcell off and just run. And then there is a court battle and Hubbard wore him down. And
How
Purcell
many
finally
years
just,
was
okay,
the
3 4 years
3 to 4 years?
of,
Okay.
of court battling before Purcell just said, okay, fine, fuck it, it's yours. And he had already moved on himself. Purcell had tried to keep going with Dianetics even after Hubbard took off, but he wasn't, he wasn't Hubbard. So that
Well,
didn't
he
really
didn't
go
have a
anywhere. And
Mary
Purcell,
Sue with him.
he didn't. And he also wasn't trying to start a mass movement so much as he was just trying to actually honestly use it for therapeutic
He's
purposes.
trying to actually use
And
it, yeah.
it doesn't really work. Um, so that's kind of where we come to by then, and he gets the rights back to Dianetics. So in 1955, there's a reunification, and
Oh.
there's a book published called Dianetics 55, 1955.
Oh. Uh-huh.
There's a reunification Congress where Hubbard calls people from around the U.S. We're bringing these subjects back together, and it's going to be objective processing and Dianetics auditing. And we're not at this point. Hubbard had already had a falling out with Volney Matheson, so we're not using e-meters anymore. So there's a period of time from 55 to 57 where there's no e-meters. So it's objective auditing, it is Dianetics auditing or a Dianetics approach, and it is exteriorization stuff. And that's what makes up Scientology
That
for
ended
a
up being the
few years.
core of
The
like,
core of it, that's right.
if I had to equate it, it's like, hey, we've got our Bible together, guys. This is the book. We've got all our pieces that we've pulled together. We had a congress about it. We decided what we were gonna use, and this is our core book.
That these ideas survive to this day.
Damn.
And have been reworked and refurbished and this and that. But these basic ideas, yeah, first 5 years, this is where we end up. And we have this reunification process. And then Hubbard brings in, through the rest of the 1950s, he brings in other concepts to try to bolster flagging or failing membership or respond in cultural ways to the Cold War. He goes into radiation in 1957. This is where he presents himself as an atomic physicist, even though he flunked out of the class. He presents himself as a civil engineer, even has one fucking day of training as a civil engineer. But he's trying to pass himself off as this credible person. And he, doctor of Scientology, this kind of crap, right? When they're self-issued certificates, I don't know that they count, Ron.
Yeah.
And we roll forward into trying to infiltrate into society through various dissemination, promotion, marketing ways. Hubbard's trying to become the next big thing. He keeps trying. And he's trying through, okay, we have all the answers to radiation. And this is when the beginnings of what become this sweat out program they do now, this purification program where they go in a sauna for 5 hours. The beginnings of that start there with niacin. Hubbard says niacin is all you need to combat the effects of radiation. You just take a bunch of niacin and you get your auditing, and your auditing will cure, any radiation problems. So Hubbard's
because that's
just
when those microwaves came out.
That's right. So
No!
exactly. And Hubbard's trying to ride the wave of ignorance and misunderstandings and confusions about big picture stuff and little picture stuff. And Hubbard has whatever degree of talent he has,
he's
to charismatically.
He's trying to like needle through where people are getting information and where they don't quite know enough yet. He's
That's
trying
right.
to like
Exactly.
ride that. Oh, what an asshole!
Yes,
it's
it is
kind
Deepak
of
Chopra 1950 style.
Oh,
yeah, it really
boy.
is. Yeah. So that's what he's kind of pulling off around there. And this is the time period where we see in movies like The Master where, the son, right, is telling the guy, he's just making it all up as he goes, right? I mean, it really is that kind of thing. But he is keeping a record, and he is got some kind of mythology building up. He's got a dogmatic system of belief that is being built up around scientific concepts or scientific sounding. He's trying to science this religion, but he's insisting now, as of 1953, he'd incorporate it as a church. And now it was the Church of Scientology. And there were ancillary or adjacent corporations or organizations he also set up, but Scientology was really where it was all centered around. And it's from this point that in Hawaii, Washington State, I think Seattle, Los Angeles, Phoenix, over in the UK in 1952, he had opened up London, or a UK side of Scientology, like an official organization over there, which became a Church of Scientology. And these are the earliest churches of Scientology. Funny that Hawaii is one of them. It's at this point, it's one of the smallest, tiniest, most struggling places in Scientology, but it's also one of the first churches. So he sets up shop from Phoenix. He moves in 54, 55 to Washington, D.C. This is what's called the founding Church of Scientology, even though officially Phoenix was the first church. He refers to DC as the founding church. He wants to be close to political power, thinks maybe he can make plays in that direction, but that, of course, goes absolutely fucking nowhere because Hubbard wasn't the Evangelicals or the Heritage Foundation or, you know,
No.
the what was that group, the John something or others. Anyway,
John
there were
Smith?
highly
Mormons?
organized groups of people who were
Yeah.
making inroads into Washington. Hubbard was not one of them. So he ends up leaving Washington and in fact fleeing Washington once again the authorities are sniffing around. He moves the whole operation in 1959 to St. Hill Manor in East Grinstead in the UK. And that's where he sets up the international headquarters for Scientology in 1959.
Well, at least it's not a 7-Eleven, I guess.
No,
that is an
not a 7-Eleven.
old joke that I don't think you know. Oh, I'll have to tell you that later.
I don't know that joke.
There's
Okay.
a couple of people in the chat that are gonna know. I'll tell you afterwards. But we should probably look to wrap up there. We're at an hour and 45 minutes.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Do you want to?
But that's basically the 50s. That's mostly the 50s. There were twice a year he would give these congresses in the summer and winter. Tended to be on New Year's, the week of New Year's, and sometime in the summer. Usually he would give these congresses where he'd go to a place and do a set of lectures that were kind of at the public level. He would encourage people to bring their friends and family to those lectures.
Yeah.
And
sermons. He was doing sermons.
Those were kind of, in a way, they were Scientology sermons. They were a set. Usually he would do it over a weekend, and it would be like a 2-day, 3-day Congress. He would have the staff do all the work of organizing everything, setting up the hall, doing all the stuff. He'd show up, do the lectures. There would be a seminar workshop activity around the lectures. And then after the Congress was over, he would give a more advanced, what was called an advanced clinical course to the pros and in the area. So he would address the noobs, and then he would have this advanced course that the noobs couldn't come to. So, what's that? Well, if you, participate for a while and get a little trained, you'll be able to find out, and you'll get more FaceTime with our living founder, right? And you'll get the bleeding edge of the latest and greatest research he's been doing, because everybody thought he was researching. And these congresses and these ACCs became the lecture series we have now, but they were also the twice yearly, gatherings of Scientologists in various regions. People would fly in. People would pay a lot of money to come to these things. Hubbard was
like Christmas in New York. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this was the model, more so than the church bringing a bunch of money in, flowing it up. That model hadn't really fallen into place yet totally in the 50s. It's at the end of the 50s, Hubbard starts laying the framework for that model, and that's what we'll talk about next time. There's
a lot of like groundwork and networking that needs to be done first, and infrastructure to even start building that house of cards.
That's right. That's right.
Do you want to take a couple questions? Are you down for
that?
Yeah,
let's do it. Absolutely.
All right, let's give us a quick break so I can go pee, because about an hour and 40 minutes is about as long as I can last, and I'll be right back.
Awesome.
Okay. We are back. Welcome, welcome, welcome,
Cuckoo.
welcome, welcome. Oh, you cuckoo ka man. Okay, so we got a couple questions from the chat. And these ones
Yeah.
won't go away. I'm not gonna edit these out later. These are just gonna be available for everybody, so don't worry about that. If you're looking for it after the fact, it should still be here. If I did take it out, it was for some other reason. Who knows? What am I up to? In fact, you should be like, what the fuck are you doing? Megan Fox's giant boobs. Are Scientologists pro-capitalism?
Yeah. Yeah, they are. If anything, they're sort of right of libertarian a little bit. Hubbard was very kind of anti-establishment, anti-tax. He hated taxes. So you're going to find Scientologists to be very anti-tax, you know, and anti-government to the degree they tend to go small government kind of folks.
That makes sense. That sounds like tracks.
Hubbard instills that in a lot of his lectures. Not everybody buys or gets on board with that. There are liberal Scientologists. There are plenty of them, but it skews pretty hard, you know, sort of Trumpian pro-capital type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Godless Scummer for 5 had asked, I'd love to, well, it's kind of more of a statement that you might have an answer to. I'd love to know how many people in Scientology were either Jesus, Caesar, George Washington, Napoleon, or Genghis Khan in a past life.
Nailing it. So many. So many. Yeah, you could also ask how many were Hubbard's kid. Because there were, you know, Hubbard had kids and one of them, you know, died of suicide. And yeah, there was, yeah. So people appear in Scientology. Hubbard actually wrote a bulletin that talks about the fact that this is why you do not discuss your auditing with anybody else, because
for two Genghis
you could
Khans
run
to
into
show
this.
up.
Yeah, everybody wants to be Cleopatra. Nobody wants to be Cleopatra's handmaiden, right? Yet, obviously, somebody was. So
Somebody's got to be the clam, guys. Somebody's got to be the clam.
The other thing you see in Scientology that Hubbard was trying to discourage with that bulletin, and I saw it happen all over the place, so he didn't end up discouraging it, is when especially guys would talk about, oh, hey, we have such a connection. We must you know, we must have been together, you know, previously.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, and believe me, I saw plenty of women do that shit too. But
I don't doubt it. I don't.
Yeah,
I do
it was not a gendered
that
activity, but it was an activity. Yeah, people would get into that because when you hit it off with somebody and it's magical and sparks are flying, it's awesome. And in a Scientology sense, it must be like, oh, well, we must be hitting it off because we've, you know, known each other before, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You talk to somebody, you feel like you've known them forever. It's because you did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people even go as far as having whole conversations about how they knew each other before, right? So,
well, I mean, that's just kinky.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, actually. It is a little kinky.
Orange Dot, who's been a member for I believe 2 months, said is asking, from a Scientologist perspective, do my dishes have thetans? Like, can they be objects? I guess.
No, they can be, but no, you generally don't. There are far, far, far too many Scientologists that I was ever comfortable with who would claim that their cat was occupied by a thetan, right? That, there's somebody in there. I can see it when I look in their eyes, you know.
Which is familiar.
Yeah, you would get that. You would get that a lot about people's pets. But outside of pets, I didn't see thetans, you know.
We don't have a Mrs. Potts or like a Beauty and the Beast castle situation.
No. Although you do have the phenomena of people of haunted locations and the easy explanation, there's some thetan hanging around scaring people, right? So you could even have disembodied tied to a location kind of thing. You could we had that at the Scientology, at the Church of Scientology in Santa Barbara. It was in an old hotel that people had died in back in the old, you know, back in the day. It was a Depression era hotel building, and we had a ghost up in the upper floor, and people talked about it all the time.
Fascinating. Okay,
Yeah.
the Victoria, who's a recent member, it says recent specifically, so presumably less than a month, says, what level would I be? I can disassociate like that with no prompts needed.
Um,
So in like the
well,
black
that's pretty high
five,
level as far as Scientology goes. I mean,
yeah.
if you walked in there claiming you could exteriorize at will, people would be like, "Oh, hey, that's awesome." But we also still have all these things to sell you. So it's not the be all end all of Scientology. There is at this point in modern Scientology a level called L12, I believe it is. There are the L stands for list, and there's L10, 11, and 12. These are the most expensive auditing, the most expensive auditing. That's the word for it. You can get. It's like $12,500, and an intensive. It's basically like $1,000 an hour to get this auditing, which is supposed to result in you being permanently exteriorized.
Permanently exteriorized.
Yeah, operating
So you're just
permanently
playing, you're just
outside
gonna
your
do
body.
your whole life in third person? For third person
Yep.
perspective?
Yep.
Oh my
I never met a
god.
single person who actually claimed to be exterior all the time in Scientology. I never met one, but
That's crazy.
theoretically, you could get there. Yeah.
Noise Ending is asking, could one visit this ghost?
The building's still there. 524 State Street, Santa Barbara,
So
California. Check it
theoretically,
out.
if the ghost is still there, theoretically you could
Second
go and
floor.
visit that
Yep.
ghost. Second
That's right.
floor.
At
What
night,
if
people said it was a smoking guy, and at night, people said you could literally see the red end, of the
like a
embers on his
cigarette?
cigarette as he was pacing the halls, and you could hear somebody walking, on the balcony of the second floor of the building, and that's legit. I did live in that building, and I did hear those creakings, and I did think it was a ghost when I was
Yeah,
there,
valid.
because that was the lore. Yeah.
Victoria says that they don't think their insurance would cover.
Your insurance definitely is not going to cover your religious
Probably
counseling
not.
at the church. No.
So Noise Ending is asking, isn't that a legitimate there is a legitimate condition called depersonalization disorder, feeling you're seeing oneself from the third person. Now,
Yep.
you probably know better than I do. I'm pretty sure that you can have like dissociative disorders. Like I'm pretty sure there's more
Yeah,
than one.
that's
So,
right. There's a number of ways that dissociation can show up in a person's life, and it doesn't mean that you are disordered because you have a dissociative episode or episodes. Anything, these can be induced. These could be subjectively experienced in lots of different ways through drugs, alcohol, trance states entered into, right? So-called altered states, or you could have other genetic or let's say mental health or neurodivergent issues, which maybe make your brain a little bit different from the average bear and more susceptible to dissociative states, where we have this thing called a dissociative disorder. And I'm not a clinician, so my knowledge of it is academic in that degree. I've not sat and studied or sat down with people who suffer from dissociative identity disorder, but I understand it can be quite strong. It can come real hard on some people. Thankfully, it's that level of it is pretty rare, though.
no, fascinating. I found all this
Yeah.
stuff super interesting. Psychology,
Yeah.
like I in my brain, the way I think about psychology is that psychology to me is like a very understudied and like is much further behind in like where you think like average like computers and how far we've gotten in some of these technologies, which is interesting. It makes sense as to why we are, because the way we do anything is by throwing human suffering at it, and sometimes we go, "That's we can't do that." Sometimes we
Well,
think better of that.
I'll tell you what's interesting is if you connect the dots between the Enlightenment and psychology.
Mm.
Because one of the reasons it's a new science is because we required an extensive paradigm shift of how we think about our mental life.
Yes. Yeah.
Prior,
Good point.
you have psychological principles rooted in ancient history or in ancient ideas, but that doesn't mean they were practicing psychology or psychoanalysis, in Plato's day, right? So
Right,
we
right,
can
right.
we can we can connect dots backwards to certain ideas and see how they came forward, but there wasn't anybody sitting down with another person doing, counseling. There
Yeah,
was
that's the
go
stuff
talk to
that
your
was
priest.
yeah,
There
and what
was
they
go
were
take it up with
doing
God, right? There
yeah,
were like other ways of dealing with that
like
stuff.
really,
So,
really early on, like reading tea leaves, tarot cards, a lot of this like predictive clairvoyancy type stuff was that version of quote unquote counseling at the time, but it had like so much other stuff in it that was just not effective, not useful. Well, and we didn't have access to doing things like CT, like CAT scans, and being able to
oh God,
like
no.
see what parts of people's brains were being active at a time. There is like next to zero any kind of like operations that were happening on people's brains. So like you wouldn't have like somebody you might have like people pulling teeth, you might have people like sewing up or restitching an arm or pulling out certain parts of your body. The brain was not really as much.
Yes, not as much,
It
but
did
let's
happen.
not. But yes, there were tools, implements, and evidence of brain surgeries all over
Mhm.
the ancient world, all
It's so
over it.
cool. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
So it was not something people weren't delving into, but it just took a
Right.
lot of cultures, a lot of time to accumulate enough written knowledge to get to where we got to. And
Yeah.
and more importantly, the entire attitude about the individual and what the individual really literally was as a unit of
Yeah.
society was very different pre-enlightenment. It just was,
Yep.
and we didn't have that individualistic you're important because you're alive kind of view.
Right.
So psychology wasn't a thing that people were even would have thought of as valuable in the way we think about it now as valuable.
Yeah, it's a
It's
whole different mindset.
a whole different mindset. That's right.
Whole
So,
the, like the whole philosophy
yeah.
changes, right? And then you have things like the government getting in the way and stopping us from torturing people for doing experiments on them to find out what brains do if you do this to
There
them.
is that too. There is
uh.
that too. That's right. That's right. All kinds of levels to this problem. That's right.
Yeah. I find I find it very interesting. I think that it's one of my things where I'm like, I think the difference between hard science and soft science is just sort of how far into it we've gotten. So I think a lot of social science will probably make its way into being considered a hard science. I just find the term wishy-washy.
We'll see. We'll
I
see.
hope so. I don't think I'll be
We'll see.
alive, but I hope so.
It's the interesting thing about the human mind and and neuropsychology and stuff is that it tells us that this device here is the most complicated device ever examined
We're a
by
brain trying to
humans.
figure it itself out, yeah.
The brain is amazing, and we have barely delved into the brain down here, and
Mhm.
we are only recently considering the fact of the sense of self and consciousness and all that not even being an individual phenomena but a social
Mhm.
phenomena. So there's so
Yeah.
many places this is going to
So
go where
cool.
100 years from now they'll look back on what we're saying now and go, oh, those silly fools.
Oh, they're silly
And
idiots. We don't know what they're talking
I would
about.
look forward to it if I was alive in 100 years, but
I love it. I can't wait to be I can't wait to be so wrong. Like I can't wait to be so
right,
wrong. It's gonna be
right,
it's great. It's one of my favorite things. But we should wrap
exactly.
it up there. We've been live
Yeah,
for
yeah,
two
let's do it.
hours. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us again not next Thursday, the following Thursday, same bat time, same bat place. Back for more of this. And what did you say we're going into next?
Well, we will go into the beginnings of institutional Scientology, let's say,
Oh,
and how modern Scientology starts at
nice.
Saint Hill in England, because that's really formation time now. Now let's actually
Mm.
build something. So
Perfect.
that's where we'll
Thank you
go.
so much for joining us. Like, share, subscribe if you're new here. See y'all soon. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.